All right, so we're here. It's February 17. By the way, I remind you, in March, a bunch of good events are coming up. You should try going to some of these, and the best thing to do is volunteer to help, or so you get in free and so you make some friends. But anyway, these are very, very good to go to and worth extra credit. And for today, we're down to Chapter 5. Down here, so let me go to my environment here to run the Chapter 5 collab that comes from the textbook authors. So as usual, we run this preliminary thing to prepare it to draw these pictures that they like. And okay, conditionals and recursion. We're basically going to talk about the if statement. The if statement is the archetypical conditional. If some condition is true, do something, otherwise do something else. All right. So, remember the integer division is here. If minutes is 105 and I divide it by 60, then I get 1.75. So if this was an integer, the division turns it into a floating point number. If I don't want that, I use //. Now it'll round it off to 1. Or not round it off, it'll truncate it. It'll just throw away whatever's on the right of the decimal point and give me the integer portion. So the number of complete hours in 105 minutes is 1. All right. Now, if I want the remainder, I could subtract off 1 hour in minutes, and that'll give me the remainders, or I could use the modulus operator, which is better. The modulus operator will tell you, if you divide minutes by 60, it tells you what's left over after the integral numbers of 60s, so this gives you the minutes. That gives you minutes part of the time, and this one gave you the hours part of the time. All right, fair enough. All right, so here, for example, if you want to pick out the digits, 123, x percent 10 will get you the 3. And x percent 100 will get you the last two digits, 23. So it's one possible way to pick off portions of a number in various ways. And it can therefore do clock arithmetic. That's the original meaning of modulus. All your math is done on a little ring. If you use a normal clock, if you labeled it the way computers would, we labeled from 0 to 11. And then you add 1 to 11, you get back down to 0. That's the issue here. So if you have percent 12, if you take 11 plus 3, then it's going to turn into 2 because you pass the 0 point and you climb back up again. 0 to 11, the next one is 0, 1, 2. So 2 is what happens if you go 3 past 11 on a clock face labeled from 0 to 11. So, all right, so Boolean expressions are expressions that are true or false. So 5 equals 5. Now 5 equals 5 would try to assign 5 to 5, and that would be an error because 5 is not a valid variable name. But 5 equals 5 is a Boolean condition, and that's marked true. And here you have 5 equals 7. That's false, of course. Okay, like I say, a common error would be to do this. X equals 5 and Y equals 7. Those are not those are assignments, and now if you do x equals y, that's false. All right. But if you were to do x equals y, it would change x to have the value of y, and it wouldn't have a result of true or false. So these are special values that belong to type Boolean. Python has a Boolean variable type that only has two possible values, true and false. All right, so equals is one of the relational operators. This is not equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal, the usual stuff. X, in this case, x is 5 and y is 7. So x does not equal y. X is not greater than y, but x is less than y. X is not greater than or equal to y, but it is less than or equal to y. So the usual thing. All right, so those are called logical operators. Well, these things are comparison operators. Then you have logical operators to combine them, like and or, and not. So x greater than 0 and x less than 10, both of those are true, so the combination is also true. If you have 1 x modulus 2 equals 0, that means x is even, or x modulus 3 is 0, that means it's a multiple of 3. Now, what was x again? X is 5. So 5 is... 5 is not even, and 5 is not divisible by 3, so this is false, and that is false, so this combination should be false, and it is. Not negates it, so if x is greater than y, which it is not x greater than y is true. All right? And 42 and true. Here, I would like to think this would be an error. You can't compare an integer and combine that with a Boolean, but I think it'll work, yeah, because this is a loose typing like Python has, where if you give it 42, but then you put it in context where it should interpret it as a Boolean, it will interpret any non-zero value as true. So, all right. As I warn you, I would try to avoid doing this. I mean, loose typing tends to lead to trouble. It's easy to confuse people. Like I mentioned many times, I really don't like people that write code that is overly clever and hard to read. I highly recommend doing the opposite. Write code that is simple-minded and easy to understand, rather than showing off. It's a lot better to just get the right answer in a clean, reliable way than to do something that you think is super clever, that you will forget how it works and other people will forget how it works, and pretty soon somebody will update it and it will go wrong on you. Anyway, so here we have if x greater than 0, then put a colon and an indentation, and then you do something. So if x is greater than 0, it will print x is positive. Okay, that's how you do it. All right, this part is called the condition. That's either true or false. If it's true, it does this. So if x is less than 0, now pass will do nothing. It'll just move on to the next statement. It's just a placeholder. So this will do nothing regardless. All right, now you can also have an else. Here I did not have an else, so if the condition is true, it does this. Otherwise, it just goes on to the next command, does nothing. You can have an else clause. If x is even, x%2 equals 0, then print it's even. Otherwise, print it's odd. That's how you do it. Now you have an if statement with two branches. So, or after it's odd, all right. Then you can have change conditionals. If you want to have three cases, in, I think, C++, there's a case statement. I don't think they have that in Python, but they have elif, which amounts to that. So if this condition is true, you do this. Else, if this condition is true, you do that. Otherwise, you do this. So this is what happens if you have three cases. And you can have as many elif clauses as you like. So now if x is less than y, it'll print this. If x is greater than y, it'll print that. Otherwise, it'll say they're equal. Fair enough? So, all right. And of course, the conditions are checked in order. So if one condition is true, it never looks at the others, just skips right past them. That's also, by the way, firewall rules work in firewalls. Anyway, you can nest conditionals. You can have if this is true, do that, else execute another if. As long as you indent it, then you have to indent it further for the inside here. This is true of all Python statements. You can indent and include them, any block of code can be indented to make a sub-block of code. So if x equals y, it'll print it's equal. Otherwise, it will then compare x less than y and do this. All right. So this will do the same thing that the one before it did with three statements. It's just lays it up a little bit differently. It's another way to do it. And both of them, by the way, have the property that the first condition is true, it will never do any of this at all. Same thing was true here. If the first condition is true, it'll never do any of that. So if you were to try to write the most efficient code and you're worried about not wasting time, you might want to put the most common condition first. So most of the time, it will never even check the other things. That would be a way to save time if one of these conditions is more likely than the others. All right. So logical operators will provide a way to simplify these things. So here's one. If x is greater than 0, but if x is less than 10, print this. Okay, remember we had one before with a compound. If x is less than 0 and x greater than 10. But then it has to do both comparisons. Here, it can do them one at a time, and therefore if it fails the first one, it never wastes time doing the second one. So again, it's a possible matter of improving the efficiency. All right, the print statement only works if you make it past both of them, so it's the same as this one, this and that. But in this case, I'm pretty sure it has to do both conditions all the time. But I'm not really sure. I don't really know exactly how it runs. Logically, if the first one's false, it really doesn't have to do the second one, and maybe it doesn't. I don't know how to find out exactly what Python does easily. In compiled language, I could look at the assembly code. I'm not quite sure what you do in Python to find out exactly what it's doing. Anyway, all right, and here's another option. If x is greater than 0 but less than 10, you can write it in a simpler way. That's not too bad. All right. And as I mentioned, a function can call itself. This is actually not a special property of Python. This is a property of the entire arrangement of code, you can do this in assembly code. A function can call itself. Because when you call a function, you set up a new stack frame of memory. When you call it again, you set another stack frame of memory. There's really nothing to logically prevent a function from calling itself anyway, all the way down to machine code. So here I can have countdown of n. If n is less than 0, print blast off. Otherwise, print n and call countdown of n minus 1. So that's a function that's going to call itself. And so if n is 0 or negative, it'll print the word blast off. Otherwise, it'll count itself. So here, it's going to 3, 2, 1 blast off. So what that's going to do is launch one with 3, then launch itself again with 2, launch itself again with 1, and then launch itself again with 0. So at this point, it's going to be 4 layers deep, and it will have 4 copies of that program in memory all running. So you can run out of memory with this kind of calling yourself, but it does work until you hit the limits of your processing environment, which of course the processing environment we're using here is not all that powerful. That's called a recursive function. So here's something that'll print a string n times. So it'll print it once and then call itself again with n minus 1. So that'll have the same effect. So if I call print n times spam 4, I'll get spam, 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 spam. It called itself. All right, and so you have stack diagrams for these, which might be informative. So there you go. Countdown for 3, for 2, for 1, and 0. And at the point when you're doing the 0, all 3, 4 of these are laid up in memory, all running. Then you return, 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 return. That's how to do it all. All right. And I think there's just another diagram it's going to draw here. Yeah. Just another one showing print n times 3, 2, 1. All right. You can also have infinite recursion. Here it's going to call recurse, and it's going to call itself, but there isn't any n counting down, so there's nothing that will stop it. So this is going to just run until it exceeds the limit, the size of the stack. So when I call recurse, it's going to run for a while, and then it's going to say, it's going to crash, maximum recursion depth exceeded. And so it'll try to show me the stack frame, but there's so many frames it didn't show me them all. I remember when I was doing this for one of the projects we have later in this course, and I remember I seeing how many of these you could stack up, and I think it was about 100 in this environment before they ran out of space, but I suppose it depends on the complexity of the function. Anyway, you can also take keyboard input. You can do that in this Python environment. It's worth seeing because it's a little screwy. So here it's going to take input from the user. So when you run this, it puts a little box there and it's waiting. It's still running. So I have to put in some stuff here like Fred and then press enter. So it might look a little funny, but that's how you get input from the keyboard in this Colab environment. All right. So you might want to put a prompt there. You can put it right in the input statement. So what is your name? Great. You can give it a name. All right. And then it'll repeat the name back. This means a new line. It wants to put a new line before the input. So prompt, what is the airspeed velocity? Take input. Okay, there we are. And so I can put in something. Now if I put in WER, it doesn't complain because I didn't use it. Now probably it expected a number, but since I didn't do anything with it, it didn't notice that it wasn't a number. But here, if I try to turn it into an integer, then I'll get a runtime error that you can't put something other than a number there. All right. If you do put in a number, though, remember, I think we talked about this before. If I put in a number like 10, it does not get the number 10. It gets a string containing 1 and 0. And when you have to evaluate it with the int function here, that'll turn it into an integer. It's not an integer right away. It's always a string. You have to convert it to an integer, and now you can, and it'll get it right. All right. So like I say, when you're trying to debug things, the Python error messages are pretty helpful, although they have a little extra information. And here, there's an indentation error. So if you're on this one you'll see a lot, indentation error, when you make mistakes in your indentation. If some line is not indented after the previous line had a colon, or if something's indented and it's not in a block where the previous line had a colon, then it's going to complain. Or if you have two types of indentation, like tabs at one and then spaces at another, so they look the same, but they're not really the same, it'll complain about that too. If you're trying to convert a ratio to decibels, 10 times math log 10 of ratio, but ratio is an integer. Perhaps it's going to tell me you can't take the log of an integer. I don't know. I've never tried. Okay, math domain error. That's not very helpful. But like I say, I suspect it is that you can't take the log of an integer variable. Probably if you make it a floating point variable, which you can do by putting float here. It'll probably take that. Let's see. No, it still doesn't like it. Oh, so this math log thing must expect some particular kind of variable type. Integer division, yeah. I guess you'd have to, let's see. It's not in the valid domain. The logarithm of 0 is undefined. Oh, that's another issue. But this is, oh, I see. Oh, numerator is 9/10. Well, I'm sort of intrigued by this, and they didn't really explain to me. And this is why I love AI. Okay, what type of argument does this function expect in Python? This is a perfect case for AI. What type of argument is required by Python's that function? And another great thing is that typos don't really matter. Okay, it expects a numeric argument, either an int or a float, that must be positive. Well, then why is it failing? This first one should have worked. Ratio, oh, 9, I see, the // 9/10 gives me a 0. That's why. It's doing the log of 0. Okay. So if I do this, then it'll work. Okay, I just wasn't reading it carefully. You can't take the log of 0. Now, this is an example of a pretty unhelpful message. It could have told me I can't take the log of 0. Instead, it gave me this weird error. However, these days you use AI to figure it out. All right. Anyway, so that makes sense. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to show you about the chapter. And I don't see any new comments. I'm going to stop recording.